Greetings and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. Is a new Cold War developing between the United States of America and Russia? And is there a hot war developing between those two power blocs as a consequence? These are some of the questions which are being discussed in the international press right now due to an attack speech by Vladimir Putin from Russia in Germany last week, accusing the United States of America of being the greatest threat to world peace and having the desire for world dominance. And even though his attack was directed towards the United States primarily, it also referred to Europe. Before we go on, let me just say that the Bible nowhere indicates that a war is going to occur between Russia and the United States of America prior to the return of Jesus Christ. Now, it is true, of course, that the Bible doesn't specifically mention every single war which has happened and which is still going to happen, perhaps, since the Bible was written. For instance, the Iraq War is never mentioned specifically in Scripture, but the consequences are. The Bible clearly indicated more than 2,000 years ago that in those last days America's reputation in the world will diminish, so much so that it will ultimately be alone in this world. At the same time, a nuclear war between Russia and the United States would have been mentioned in Scripture because it would be such a devastating war that it couldn't have been ignored. Now, some say World War I and World War II are not mentioned in Scripture either, but they are, and you need to know where to find those references. We can see from history that God simply didn't allow a war to take place between Russia and the United States of America, even though we had some close calls. You might recall the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. And we were at the brink of nuclear war at that time, as the world has subsequently learned, when Khrushchev was trying to install nuclear missiles on Cuba, and when John F. Kennedy and his advisors rejected and resisted that attempt. Khrushchev finally, ultimately, buckled and withdrew the ships bringing those missiles to Cuba, but it was, as I said, a very close call. But God simply didn't allow it to happen because it wasn't in accordance with his prophecies and his plan and his purposes. At the same time, we should not ignore the comments which were made by Putin in Germany, and also subsequently his trip to the Middle East. And Germany and Europe have already reacted with fear. Russia is the second highest oil exporter in the world, following just the Saudi Arabian country. And when Russia went to the Middle East, talking to Saudi Arabia and other countries, Europe reacted with fear, saying that they are not going to allow an oil cartel to develop between Russia and those countries. The Bible clearly states that a war is going to take place very soon between Europe, a United States of Europe, and Russia and some Far Eastern countries. First, Europe will be extremely concerned about rumors coming from those areas, and they will attack. But it will be a rather mild attack in comparison with the counterattack by Russia and other countries. And I say other countries because the Bible says that they will have an army of 200 million soldiers. Now, you couldn't have just Russia providing that army. It has to be in collaboration with other countries such as China, India, Japan, Pakistan, Korea, and others. And that is clearly prophesied, and it will be devastating for this world. But there is no war prophesied between the United States of America and Russia. In order for you to understand what is actually stated in the Bible, which is certainly going to happen, please read our free booklet, The Great Tribulation and the Day of the Lord. Now, you might say, why should I be interested in that? Because after all, specifically if you live in the United States, America is not going to be part of that one. But let me tell you, my friends, you should be seriously interested in that because it is going to affect you personally. And it's also going to affect your country, perhaps in ways you haven't even imagined. You just need to know what is prophesied so that you can prepare spiritually and even physically. You can't be without that information. And so we will, on these programs, continue to advise you and inform you about what the current world news mean in the light of biblical prophecy. You just have to stay tuned to our programs. And so until next time, this is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.